the workings of your hub. And today we will present to you an online market research tool, which can be very relevant for the entrepreneurs and SMEs you're working with. And the tool, it gives you access to the latest trade and business information, and you can also thereby facilitate market research within key value chains. I'm not the expert in this, but it's my colleague, Anna Jankowskova, who will present to you today ITC's Global Helpdesk. And Anna is a market research at the International Trade Center in our Trade and Market Intelligence team. Her team works to create and adapt digital tools to support companies as they grow and pursue new opportunities in the market. So I think it's a super relevant topic for today. Happy to have you here, Anna. And I just hand it over to you without much further ado. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Julia, and good morning to all of you. I have to admit, I'm super excited to be here because I don't often have the honor and the pleasure to work with innovation hubs and to work with also young entrepreneurs. So this is really a great day for me, and it's also wonderful to see those of you from all around Africa, it looks like at the moment. We have a great group from many countries, and I really hope that the tool that I'm going to show you here today will help simplify market research for both you and for the companies that you work with, so that as you plan expansion into new markets, as you plan and look for growth opportunities, you can do so quickly and relatively easily, and have a new tool in your pocket for the future. So what I'd like to do with you today is to walk you just through a brief presentation in terms of introducing a little bit the type of information that's contained in the tool. And then I'm going to do a brief demo for you. And I'm also going to ask you to try it yourself, because I firmly believe that I don't learn anything by watching somebody else do it if I don't try it myself. So I would love for you to also give it a go and see how it feels and give us any feedback. And especially from your perspective as entrepreneurs, what information looks relevant. And if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, that would be wonderful as well. I have with me today also my colleague Meros, who is going to be active in the chat box as well, so that if you have questions along the way, he will be there to answer those. And also we'll also have a question and answer at the end. So if you'd like to save them to the end, that's possible as well. But welcome again, and very excited to be here with you today. And I think I'll just start by starting with my brief presentation. Are you able to see the presentation on my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it came up.
Excellent. Okay. So once again, I work at the International Trade Center in the Trade and Market Intelligence section. In my previous life, I also worked at the OECD and the World Economic Forum, and I've been working for years on economic research and on creating tools to help us better understand how to seek out trade opportunities. So the first message that I really wanted to get across to you, this is actually the World Global Trade Report from UNCTAD that came out yesterday. And the good news is that global trade is bouncing back, and that we're bouncing back faster than we have from any of the other recessions in previous years, at least in this century. So what's great is that things are improving, and they're improving quickly, at least at the global level. So this is really good news for us. This year, the WTO estimates that global trade will grow by 8%. This is counting both goods and services for the rest of this year. And what's also wonderful is to see that there's been a really broad recovery across sectors. So what's great here is that we can see that apart from the energy sector and for transport equipment, there has been year-on-year growth. So this is looking at changes between 2020, first quarter 2020 and 21. And the blue line is first quarter 2019 and 2021. So you can see both in terms of pre-pandemic and pandemic benchmarks that things are really growing, or have grown across nearly all sectors in the first quarter of this year. So this is great news. It means that things are finally starting to accelerate, and there's a lot of opportunities. So it's fantastic to see that trade is really growing across sectors. And it's good news because it means that pretty much no matter which sector you're in, there's going to be great opportunities. I think one thing that we do need to be aware of, though, and is that recovery is going to be uneven. So there's going to be some regions and some areas, some countries that are driving growth at the moment. So at the moment, we perceive that growth is really being driven by China and by East Asia, and also the US. This is where we estimate the biggest growth centers to be in the coming year. And we see slightly lower levels of growth across other regions, such as the MENA region, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America. And what this means is that we need to really think about evaluating opportunities across markets, right? So we want to be able to take advantage of where the growth is coming from and really compare all of the different opportunities that we might have in order to be able to seize the best opportunities and also diversify our market risks. Now, as we've already seen, our consumption patterns have definitely changed in the last year. Apart from the first run on toilet paper that I think we had across most countries, we've also seen that there's been a huge uptake in athletics, in sports equipment, also in information and communications equipment. As everybody started working from home, there was also huge demand for that. Currently, I live in Sweden, and it is impossible to find spare parts for any bikes right now in Sweden. It's actually interesting because bikes are now being stolen just for the parts because there's such a lack of supply of bike parts. So consumption patterns have really changed, and it's important to understand where the opportunities are and adapt accordingly. One thing to also be aware of is that government policies in reaction to the pandemic are still ongoing. So we still have in many places, and especially in certain products like medical products, there are still restrictions on what's being exported, and it's important to be aware of what restrictions are in place, and also what lower tariffs are in place, and to be able to take advantage of this as well. So the question is, we see that things are growing. We see that there's a lot of opportunities, and it's going to be a little bit uneven across markets. But what is it that businesses, or you as incubators and you as hubs, can help businesses do to adapt and to really take advantage of these opportunities? And I would argue there's two things that are really important. First is staying informed about emerging opportunities. So being able to seek out the information to help firms take advantage of them. And the second is diversifying market risks. So if we learned anything in the last year and a half or 2 years, it's that the pandemic really tends to hit different regions in different levels of intensity and at different times. So if your activities are spread across different markets, you're much more likely to have some sort of income and some sort of revenue stream than if you're concentrated in one market and you have all of your risks just in one place. So we really need to think strategically and evaluate our options across markets. So what are we going to think about when we're thinking about where to find opportunities? We're going to first evaluate how economically attractive is a market. So we're going to consider things like market size. We want a bigger market because then we're going to be able to diversify our products a little bit more. It's going to give us a bigger, obviously, not only a bigger consumer base, but a bigger range within which to diversify our products and differentiate our products. We're also going to think about the evolution of demand. So how have exports from our country performed over recent years? What's going on? We're going to look at growth and dynamism. Is this country growing rapidly? Is demand growing rapidly? What can we expect, or what do we expect to happen? And another key concept is export potential. So export potential is a forward-looking estimate. It's a projection of what we estimate to be the reasonable or expected level of trade in a given product for a given market in the next 5 years. So it gives us a sense of what might be possible based on a few different factors. Now, what we're talking about here is basically looking at a global market share. For instance, if we're talking about Sierra Leone and cocoa beans. So what is Sierra Leone's global market share in cocoa beans? What are the countries that are really importing these cocoa beans? How quickly are they growing? And what is the strength of the trade relationship between these countries? And then we do a projection based on all of the estimates of GDP growth and population growth to really factor in a quantitative benchmark of how much do we think we could reasonably expect Sierra Leone to export to each market in terms of cocoa beans. So it gives us a benchmark figure. Now, it's not a guarantee. we're not fortune tellers, but given all of the quantitative information that we have and everything that we know from the past, this is a reasonable estimate, the best and most reasonable estimate we can make of what's possible or could be possible in the next 5 years. Another thing that we need to consider, this is just an example taking Israel to Brazil, but this applies across countries, obviously. So here we're going to talk about how much the business will think it will have to pay and how expensive it will be to export the product in terms of tariff costs. So if an Israeli company wants to export yogurt to Brazil, there are a few different tariffs they could face. The MFN, or Most Favored Nation tariff, that's available to all WTO countries, is 35%. If you are Brazil and you're part of the Israel-Mercosur agreement, it's 0%. So you have a 35% advantage here, but it's not automatic. In order to be able to get this 35% advantage or this duty-free rate, you need to be able to meet the rules of origin for this product. So in this particular case, we're looking at a regional value content of 50%. So 50% of the value of this yogurt needs to be from Israel specifically, and we need to be able to prove this with a certificate of origin in order to get the 0% duty rate. So we're also going to give you these details of what are the different tariff rates that you can expect, and what are the detailed rules behind them that you need to be aware of in order to be able to qualify for the preferential rate. Another key factor, and one that ends up being actually more important in many cases than the tariff that you pay, is what are the regulatory requirements that are actually demanded in the importing market. So for instance, if we're still an Israeli yogurt exporter, in Chile, there's only 8 regulations that apply when importing yogurt, whereas in Switzerland, there's 40 different regulations that are relevant to yogurt imports. And in China, there's 72. Now, I'm not saying that 72 is necessarily much more stringent than the 8 applied by Chile, but if a company needs to be able to adapt their product significantly to every single different market, it's going to be expensive for them and it's going to be complicated. So they really need to understand what the requirements are and make sure that they can meet them in their target market. And oftentimes, in the surveys that we've done with businesses, this can be really a key challenge or a key constraint. So we're going to give you access to the most comprehensive information we can on what are the specific requirements in the markets that we're looking at. So in order to try to make all of our lives easier, we've created something called the Global Trade Helpdesk. And now this is not just ITC. This is an initiative between UNCTAD, WTO, and ITC, as well as 9 other international organizations that are working together specifically with the goal of making trade information more accessible for small and medium enterprises. Because small and medium enterprises comprise the vast majority of firms, and they're the ones that tend to not have the resources or the research teams to be able to hunt down all of this information for them. So we're bringing it together in one single website to try to simplify life. So this is the website, the Global Trade Helpdesk. It was rolled out last year in June. So far, it's had about 52,000 firms and BSOs visited. So it's growing in popularity. And what I'd like to do with you now is to just go to the Global Trade Helpdesk and walk you through one example to just show you how it works in practice and how easy it is to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to first just have a quick look at if there's any COVID-19 relevant policies that are still in place. We're going to evaluate the demand and the potential for the product. So looking both at past performance in trade, but also at what we estimate to be future potential. Then we're going to compare market access. So we're going to look at tariffs. What is the tariff that we would face? Is there a preferential agreement? How does this work? We're going to once again look at what are the regulatory requirements. For certain products, we're also going to consider niche markets. So this is stuff like fair trade, organic, things that will get us a higher price tag and perhaps a different quality level in another market. And also the last thing we'll look at is how we can potentially identify partners for financing, trade promotion, and connect with business partners. So this is the process that we're going to follow together. So the example that I'd like to walk you through is we're going to export a beauty product, creams, from Tanzania, and we're going to compare the US market and a few regional markets in Africa. So if you'll bear with me for just 1 second, I will bring up Global Trade Helpdesk. Are you able to see my screen again? All good? Great.
Yes.
Excellent. So this is Global Trade Helpdesk, accessible at globaltradehelpdesk.org. And here at the top, you can see that it's available in 6 languages at the moment. So it's available in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, and Arabic. So in case you would like to look at it in any language other than English, please feel free to do so. What I'd like to draw your attention to is that here at the top, we have the COVID-19 related information. In the middle of the page is the search box, and this is the key. This is how you access all of the information within the site. Everything is broken down at the exporter, product, and destination market level. So this is going to be relatively detailed, as detailed information as possible, and to still make it internationally comparable. If you have a moment, there's a promotional video at some point in case you're curious. And I'd just like to show you also that this is the collaboration of all of these different organizations here. And so you have also an idea of who's supporting it. And there's a contact information in case you ever have questions or get stuck by something. This login button here, is relevant for if you're trying to access the company information, and if you're coming from Europe or from North America. If you're a user in Africa, you should have immediate free access to TradeMap, and you should be able to access, there should be no real reason necessarily to log in. If you log in, it will take you to the TradeMap access page, and you should have automatic free access. So to get started, I just wanted to, I'm going to select the exporting country. So here I'm going to type in Tanzania, and if I spell it correctly, Tanzania, and I'm going to select it from the drop-down menu. Now here in the product, if you know what your harmonized system product code is, you're going to put it in. If I put in, for instance, beauty, if I know it's a beauty product, I can see that it brings up beauty products or makeup preparations. And I know that I'm looking for the code, which is for creams, which is 330499. So I'm going to select that. And in terms of to which market, if you already know which market you would like to select, you can go ahead and do so. Otherwise, we can push this button here that says Find Markets. And this will propose the top 10 markets with export potential from Tanzania for this product. So this is an estimation of export potential in the next 5 years. And this is how it's distributed across different countries. So we can see that China has the highest export potential, followed by Hong Kong, Uganda, Rwanda. And today I wanted to focus first on the US market. So I'm going to click on the US, and then I'm going to click on Go. And this will launch our search. And this takes us to the market overview page. And what we can see here is, first of all, we're going to have a look at how economically attractive is this market. So we can see that the US imported 3.03 billion in terms of beauty products in 2020. We can see that it's the third largest importer in the world, and that actually there was a slight decline in the imports of this product in the last year overall from all suppliers. We can also see that the import share from a Tanzanian perspective, that the import share is 0% at the moment. So there's not a large presence in the market, but we estimate that there's an export potential of 1 million. So what we can see here when we look at the import value is that their imports have been rather low over the last few years, but there's been an increase in the last year. And we can see that at least one company is exporting, because we see 21,000 in terms of exports. So this is obviously a very small start, but it shows that it's a market that can be reached from Tanzania, and that there's definitely potential. We estimate quite a bit of potential for growth in this product. So if we deem it to be an economically attractive market, we can then see how much does it cost to get there. So if we click for more information about tariffs, we can see that the most favored nation tariff, which is the tariff that's applied to all WTO members, is 0% for this product. So this is great news. We don't have to pay any tariffs on this product. Now, if we move further down, we can see what the different regulatory requirements are for this product. So here we've broken them down into a few different categories to try to make things easier to understand. The first is the product requirements, which looks at the specific qualities of the product. So things like, what are the substances that you can use in the product, the specific technical specifications of our cream. Another is market conditions. So this can be things like the licenses that are required or the administrative processes that are required. We also have pre-shipment and inspection, and this is going to walk us through what happens in customs and what are the procedures and rules like governing that. And we also have the notified regulatory changes. Please don't be scared off by this number of 228, but this is the number that will tell us of what has happened in recent years and how have regulations evolved in the US for this product. So the good news is that you're going to have access to really the latest and most up-to-date information. The bad news is you may have to read through all of the notified regulatory changes. But if I just take you, for instance, through the market requirement, the product requirements, this takes us to the Assess Requirements tab, to regulations. And here I can see there's 16 different regulations here. And I can take a closer look. For instance, the first one talks about salicylic acid, and 12 to 40% is possible, and this gives you all of the technical specifications for this specific ingredient within creams. So we can do this for all of the different regulations, and we can either open it up in a web link if we'd like more information, or sometimes we also have the PDF of the actual legal requirement. So here we can find the detailed information of exactly what are the regulatory requirements for exporting our Tanzanian cream to the US, and have a sense that our cream will really be able to reach that market. So once we're sure about this, and we think that the US is an attractive market and we'd like to try our chances, then we're going to look at what needs to happen. What do we need to do as a Tanzanian exporter domestically? So how do we get it out of our door and to the US? So here what we're going to do is look at our time and cost to export and our domestic procedures. So another way to access this is going through Navigate Procedures and go to Step by Step. And here we're going to have the step-by-step procedure of what is it an exporter needs to do to get their cream to another market. So first we can see that the first step is to obtain a TBS quality mark and a product certificate. So here it's going to walk us step by step through what the application process is and where to go, when it's open, and all of the information that you could specifically need for each of the steps. So then you're going to need to obtain an EAC certificate of origin, go through the pre-clearance documentation, and these are the specific steps that you're going to need to do. And so what we can see is also how many steps are required, how many entities are involved, and what the estimated time and cost is for this. So this will give an exporter a bit of a reference point as to how long the process is and what are the different steps involved. So once you have a sense of what the process is and you've walked through the step-by-step process in order to be able to export your product, you're also going to want to think about finding your buyer, getting your trade finance, and maybe checking your marketing and promotion plan with the export agency in your country. So here under identify partners, we can find, for instance, a business directory. These are companies in the US that are involved in the cosmetic products industry. I mean, here there's only 6, so it's a starting point, but it can give you a sense of what products are being imported, and it can get you on the journey towards learning more about accessing this market. This also gives you the intellectual property offices. So if you're worried about protecting your brand name and you're worried about making sure that nobody else can use it in the target market, these are some of the offices you're going to need to contact. I can also just give you a sense under navigate procedures. We also have an intellectual property tab. And here is the global brand database so that you can search if your brand name is already being used, and you can register your intellectual property rights even globally. So if that's of interest, that's also possible here. We can also look at trade finance providers. So which are the banks that could help us get our product to market in Tanzania. And finally, we can also connect with local institutions such as the Tanzanian Trade Development Authority or the Investment Center or the Exporters Association that might be able to help us in case we have other issues along the way. Now, if we are not completely convinced that the US market is where we want to go and we would rather explore regional opportunities, for instance, I'm in one click here, clicking on Uganda, I can refresh all of this information and get in whatever information is available for Uganda. So here we can see that Tanzania has a 27% market share of creams in Uganda. It's been growing by 19% in the last 4 years. And there's an export potential of 4.4 million, but the last exports were only 2.8. So there's still quite a bit of room to grow in this market as well. But all of the information that's available is displayed once again for this market. So the idea is that you can relatively easily compare opportunities across markets and find the key information that you would need. I'm going to stop here because I think I've given you guys a lot of information. And before I give you the chance to test it yourself, are there any questions so far? Would anyone like to raise any issues, or do you have any questions? I see that the services element has already been answered by Meros. It's true that we hope to cover services in the coming years. The problem with services for the moment is that the services data is not as good. So it's not collected as systematically across countries. It's not as disaggregated, and the quality is not, it's not something that we feel comfortable sharing for the moment. We don't think it will necessarily help inform your business decisions with the quality that it is at the moment. But this is definitely something we're working towards, is mapping out, getting better services data and also matching it with the regulatory requirements as well. And does anyone have any questions for the moment, or shall we, maybe if you try an example yourself, then you'll have a better idea of what your questions might be. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. So this is the example we just had a look at of Tanzania and beauty products, and looking at US versus some of the regional partners. And what I would like you to try is to go to globaltradehelpdesk.org. And I would like you to look at exporting from Sierra Leone to France. And the product, I didn't give you the code because I would like you to find it yourself. The product is cocoa beans. So if you could please open another tab and open globaltradehelpdesk.org. Meros, can you please share the link and maybe even the details in the chat box to make that easier for people? So we're looking at exporting from Sierra Leone, and we're looking at the product cocoa beans, and our destination market is France. I'll give you just a moment to open that up. And then we have a small quiz for you to see if you can find the same answers that I did for this product. So just give it a try and see if this is something that is easy for you to use, because the same search can be done for any product and for any exporting country. So this is something that is applicable across products and sectors. Not yet for services, unfortunately, but certainly across goods. So once again, globaltradehelpdesk.org, from Sierra Leone, cocoa beans to France. So I'm going to launch the quiz here. I hope you all can see it. So the first question is, how quickly have imports of cocoa beans into France grown from all suppliers between 2019 and 2020? The second question is, what is the estimated export potential for cocoa beans from Sierra Leone to France by 2025? Then how many market conditions does France impose on cocoa bean imports from Sierra Leone? And which country has the highest export potential for cocoa beans exported from Sierra Leone? I can see that one of you has already voted, 2 of you. That's great. Please don't be shy. Great. I hope you guys are finding this relatively easy and accessible. Is anyone having any problems? I think one thing that perhaps I should clarify, that I probably should have said from the start, is that if you have different browsers to choose from, certainly using Google Chrome or is definitely better than, for instance, Internet Explorer may not show some of the visuals very well. There may be some display errors there. So to the extent possible, please use Mozilla Firefox or use Google Chrome, and please avoid Internet Explorer if at all possible. Okay, I can see that 6 of you have voted so far. Great work so far. Looks very promising. I'm going to give you just another minute or 2 so that those of you that are still looking and still trying, to give you a chance to submit your answers. And then we will quickly go through it together and answer any questions you may have. Great, I see 8 of you have voted. Thank you to all of you who are giving it a shot. 9 of you, great. I appreciate the effort. I'll give you guys just a few last seconds. If any of you are still hesitating, please feel free to submit your answers. And then we can discuss also how easy or difficult this was. All right. We're going to wrap up the polling now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I would like to share the results with you. So what you can see is that for the question, how quickly have imports of cocoa beans into France grown from all suppliers? We have 90% of you voted 10%. And then for the estimated export potential for cocoa beans, 80% of you voted 2.9 million, which is also correct. And how many market conditions does France impose on cocoa beans from Sierra Leone? 70% of you voted 3, which is correct. And then which country has the highest export potential for cocoa beans from Sierra Leone? And 80% of you said the Netherlands, which is also correct. So it's clear to me that you guys have really understood this, which is excellent. For the few of you that may not have gotten all of the correct answers, I'm just going to walk you through for one moment, because I think one of the perhaps tricky things is the product code in case you didn't find it correctly. So let's walk through that together. So if we go back to the home page, and I'm going to select Sierra Leone, and for product, if you just type in cocoa, you can see that there's a few different alternatives, but I'm going to type in cocoa beans. And this will bring up cocoa beans whole or broken, raw or roasted. And I'm going to select this one, 180100. And to which market? We had said that France was the market that we were interested in. And so here we can see the answers that we were looking for. The import growth was 10%. The export potential was 2.9 million. And we can see actually that the latest imports were 1.7 million. So we can see that there's still quite a bit of room for growth in this market as well. We can see that there were, the domestic requirements are still loading, but there should be 3 once those load. And here at the bottom, we can see that the country with the largest export potential is in fact Netherlands, with an annual value of 35.3 million in the next 5 years. So that was the example I wanted to walk you through. Do you have any questions now after having tried it yourself? Any questions, any reflections you'd like to share? And yes, the product code is the HS code. Maybe that's something I can also, I'll show you in just a moment, for those of you who are not familiar with the HS code, how you can find more information about that. So one last thing I just wanted to mention is, now that you've tried it, once you find all of this information and you have a market that you're truly interested in, what should you think about next? And I would encourage you to, first of all, look for consumer preferences and prices in the market. So this is not something you'll be able to get from a database, but if you go to any online stores, you can definitely find information about comparable creams or comparable products in that market that are similar to yours, that can give you a sense of what the prices are, what the consumer preferences are, what kind of packaging they use in that market. It can really give you a clue of how how you may need to adjust your products to be competitive in that market. Another thing you're going to want to think about is definitely trade and transport costs. So talking to a freight forwarder and thinking about how much would a shipment cost to this country and getting the exact details. So this will obviously vary on the type of transport that's used, whether it's a fragile product or not, whether it's something that needs to be transported by air or not. And transport costs will vary significantly across markets. So this is something that we also need to consider. And in terms of distribution options and buyers, I would especially encourage you in these times, in our half post-COVID times, to really seek out especially virtual trade fairs, because there's tons of virtual trade fairs going on right now. And it's an excellent opportunity to virtually meet businesses and buyers around the world and to really connect in a way that hasn't been possible before. So instead of having to fly to an international trade fair and bring all of your products now, virtually, there's still so much networking and so much interaction that's possible. So I would really encourage you to seek out those options, and also to look at chambers of commerce in the target market and to connect with companies in that way as well, if you don't have a good place to start. But I remain at your disposal in case you have any questions. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn also if that's easier for you. But if you have questions down the line and you come across something that doesn't necessarily make sense to you, then please don't hesitate to reach out. But I would like to spend our last moments just asking you for any questions or comments and getting a sense for how useful you think this might be for the companies that you work with and for your hubs. I can see that Joanna is asking about the code for ready-made clothing. So it really depends on the exact type of clothing that we're looking for, because it's going to vary specifically like across pants versus shirts versus, I mean, there's actually for textiles, there's a lot of different product codes, but Joanna, do you want to maybe ask your question out loud? Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, Anna. Thanks. It was a really useful session. So I guess what I was trying to say was, I realized that if you were putting in clothing, apparel, or textiles, it would further break it down, whether it's leather or whether it's fur skin, for example. And I just wanted to know if there was something more, let's say general, just ready-made clothing that isn't leather or isn't fur skin. That was what I was trying to find out, but it seems like it's limited in the options that it's providing.
So let's walk through this together since we have time.
And I asked this because my hub's based in Lagos, Nigeria, and we focus on working with fashion entrepreneurs and designers. And so they typically, the type of products would range from accessories and ready-made, ready-to-wear clothing. So was just trying to see how this could be applied.
Sounds great. Okay, so one thing I think I realized too that I wanted to also show you. So here under the resources section, there's a few different things that I wanted to draw your attention to. One of them that we're going to focus on right now is the HS Product Finder. So let's start here. So this is how the harmonized system for trade is classified. It's classified across these different chapters. So we can see that it starts with live animals, meat, vegetables, fruits, and we can go here and we can scroll down until we find the right chapter for textiles. Meros, do you remember which was the textiles chapter?
It's from 60, 61.
That's right. So knitted or crocheted fabrics and articles of apparel, clothing, and accessories. So I think maybe, Joanna, you would be interested here. And here you can see that then the next is the 4-digit level. So we're looking at subheadings, and you can see that it's broken down by both men's and women's. And you can see here that there's going to be quite a bit of detail as to whether it's knitted or crocheted, the type of fabric that's used, and the type of actual clothing that we have. So for instance, here we have 6104 is women's or girls' suits, ensembles, jackets, blazers, dresses, knitted or crocheted. And if we go one level down to the 6-digit level, which is the most disaggregated level that is still internationally comparable, we can see how many different codes there are. So here we're going to look at different synthetic fibers or wool or animal hair. We're going to break it down even further by both the style and by the material that's used. Does that give you a sense, Joanna, of
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. And so the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to when we're here in the business resources is that if you, for instance, never exported before, one of the things you're going to want to think about is the actual contract, the exporting contract. And so what you're going to want to be aware of is that there's model contracts here. There's also Incoterms, which is actually what you negotiate in your contract as to who's going to pay the transport and the import fees. So there's also specific terms for negotiating trade agreement, contracts that you're going to want to be aware of. And there's also information about certificates of origin. So this was, once again, if you're going to be getting a preferential tariff in the market, you're going to need to be able to prove that you meet the rules of origin and provide a specific certificate of origin. So you can also find more information about that here. Under the business resources, we also have an IP diagnostic tool. So this is something that that asks you a series of questions to help you understand whether or not you want to try to protect your IP rights in your destination market. We have information about authorized economic operators in case you're planning on exporting regularly. These are special programs that you can join at customs to make sure that you can get through faster and more easily. And I also wanted to flag that here's a few different databases for trade fairs. And here you can find, specifically, I know that for Joanna, for fashion and for apparel, there's a number of really interesting trade fairs. And here you can also find the virtual trade fairs that I was referring to. In the e-learning section, here we have a bunch of different YouTube channels that have relevant information and online platforms from across the different agencies that work in the Global Trade Helpdesk. So if you would like to learn a little bit more about trade statistics or understanding some of the concepts, you can definitely also have a look here. There's some really great classes that are available. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the resources. Does that answer your question, Joanna?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Kwame, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah,
Would you like?
mine is not necessarily a question, it's just a comment. So I think this tool is quite helpful in the sense that I usually do a lot of trade data analysis for clients, and usually you have to do it manually, like taking export data, country-specific data to do the whole country prioritization for them. So I think this putting everything together in one website is very cool and great. At least our workload will reduce. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. I'm really happy to hear that, Kwame, because I, who also used to do the research by hand and looking at 14 different databases, also think this makes my life easier. So I'm definitely happy to hear that you see how it can be useful. And I see that Phyllis in the chat box asked if the Global Trade Helpdesk incorporates the AFCFTA information. So As soon as AFCFTA agreement is in force and everything is negotiated, those details are incorporated, and especially through the African Trade Observatory project, which is helping implement this and which is helping actually improve the quality of data. There's a huge data collection exercise that's going on around the continent, and we really expect all of the information for Africa to become much more accessible and much better in the coming years as well, in terms of quality and in terms of coverage. And all of that information will also be available through the Global Trade Helpdesk. So the answer is yes. To the extent that the agreement is concluded and is implemented and is in force, that will be, you will be able to see that reflected as well. Other questions, comments?
I think this was a super comprehensive presentation, and thank you for answering all the questions in so much detail. I learned a lot, and I think also our fellow participants here could have a lot of good takeaways. I see here in the chat box, learning so much. It's exciting. That's exactly the same feeling I have, and I think I'm definitely going to play around with the platform just to find out more. If there's no further question, I think we would slowly close the webinar. For those who are not yet part of our year community, I put a link here in the chat box. We also try to connect all the hubs in this community so you can have exchange of information, or if there's more questions afterward for the Global Helpdesk, we can also answer them in here. Then we also have our LinkedIn group. Jenny, if you could post the link, that would be great, where you can connect with each other to have all the information. And there also we keep you updated on our next webinar, which will be in more or less 6 to 8 weeks. So thanks a lot for being here. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Meros. And thanks to the whole team. And looking forward to seeing you soon. Have a good day.
Yeah, just one last thing. If people have just one moment, we have just an evaluation form. We would love to hear from you as to what you thought, and if you have any ideas for how we can even make this better in the future. Meros has just put in a link. It's just a 3-minute quick questionnaire. So we would love to hear from you about if this session is useful, what information you need, and how we can serve you better in the future. So we would love your feedback if you have a moment. But thank you again.
That would indeed be great.
Just one thing to add, Meros, you shared the link to the survey, but which is editable. Can you share the link to the survey again?
Sorry for this.
Oh, you shared the wrong link.
All right, so click on a new link, which is gonna appear soon. And as Anna was saying, we're also trying to adapt these webinars to your needs. So also in the different groups, just feel free to write if you have a specific interest, or if you know of an expert who could be part of this webinar, just let us know. That would be great. And now we also have the new link. I think this is working. Thanks so much for this. And thank you for filling it in. Yeah, wonderful. I can see that it's working well. So leave your comments there.
Julia, just one comment from one of the participants. I suppose it was Albert. He asked of how they could actually complement the information available on GTH. So there's, just to direct the users, so there's an online pop-in. So if you have any additional information that you could actually complement with Global Trade Helpdesk, please feel free to get in touch with us so that we could actually discuss on how we could actually include this information on the platform.
Also, just to complement what Meros said, one of the questions that we get a lot is if you're a company and you would like to be listed on Global Trade Helpdesk for a specific product for a specific market, the way to do this is to register with Connect Americas. We can also share the link with that. And this is basically an online platform that connects different companies. And this is where we source some of the company information from that appears in Global Trade Helpdesk. So if you create a profile on Connect Americas, you will automatically appear in the Global Trade Helpdesk. We also get company information from Dun & Bradstreet and from Compass. So to be listed in those sources, I think is a little, the companies actually have to pay, but by registering at Connect Americas and putting your company profile there, you could be searchable within the Global Trade Helpdesk in terms of your company, in case that's of interest.
Thank you. You can also see the links in the chat box to check it out. If there's no more questions or comments, I would close the webinar. Sorry, there's a silent. Thank you. And then we will share the recording with you because I think it was a lot of explanation. So if you want to share this with your colleagues or friends, feel free to do so after. Have a good day, everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.